Okay, so are you ready to dive into something truly wild?
Always up for a challenge. What do we have?
Well, today's deep dive is on a topic that's fascinated and terrified people for decades.
Ebola. And you, our listeners, sent us a ton of research on it, so we know you're not messing around. You guys want to understand this thing.
It's definitely not your average virus. Ebola's what's a prime example of how a virus can exploit the very systems our bodies use to defend themselves.
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me from everything you sent over was just how deadly it is. Like when it first showed up, it was like a 90% mortality rate, right?
Ah,
Straight out of a horror movie.
absolutely. Entire villages wiped out. Healthcare workers, even with protective gear, weren't immune.
And it's not just that it's deadly, it's how it attacks you, right? Like it doesn't just damage your body, it turns your own immune system against you. Exactly. Think about your macrophages. They are like the security team of your body, first responders, engulfing and neutralizing threats.
Right, like those security guards you see in the movies, always ready to take down the bad guys.
Exactly. But Ebola, it's like it slips past them, doesn't get destroyed, but reprograms them, turns them into Ebola factories.
Wait, so now you've got the virus multiplying like crazy, and it's using your body's own defenses to do it.
That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Now imagine your dendritic cells, the intelligence officers of your immune system. They gather information about the threat and tell the T cells, your immune system's special forces, to attack.
So instead of raising the alarm, Ebola's got the dendritic cells sending out a welcoming party.
Basically, they get compromised, start releasing even more Ebola virus. And the T cells, the ones who are supposed to fight back, left in the dark.
Could it get any worse than that?
Oh, it does. Ebola triggers a signal. Some T cells self-destruct. Bach can't even fight back.
So it's a multi-pronged attack. Disables the security system, corrupts the intelligence network, takes out the special forces, and all the while multiplying at an insane rate. No wonder people call it a curse.
A curse, yeah. And the name isn't that far off when you think about how it progresses. It really is a multi-system attack. But the liver, that's often where you see the worst of it.
You were saying earlier that Ebola essentially turns your blood into like this toxic soup. Is that because the liver's shutting down?
Exactly. It's the liver's job to filter out toxins, but with Ebola running rampant, it just can't keep up. And then you add in the internal bleeding because the virus is attacking blood vessels. It's just a perfect storm.
So organ failure, internal bleeding. I mean, what's happening to the person while all this is going on? That sounds excruciating.
It is, and that's the really awful part. While the body is being ravaged, the brain is often spared.
So they're aware of everything that's happening to them.
Often, yes. Imagine the terror, trapped inside your own body, and it's betraying you. It's one of the reasons why catching it early is so crucial with Ebola, not just for survival, but to try to ease the suffering.
God, I can't even imagine. Reading through all this material, it seems like Ebola's impact, it goes beyond just the individual, right? There was a lot about how traditional burial practices played a role.
Absolutely. There are a lot of cultures where rituals after death involve close contact with the body.
Right. And even after death, the virus is still present in bodily fluids.
Exactly. It was a tough lesson. Cultural practices and public health colliding during an outbreak. Education and understanding are so important.
You realize fighting something like Ebola takes a lot more than just medical know-how.
Absolutely. It's multifaceted. The science, cultural sensitivities, building trust with communities, it all matters.
Speaking of, can we talk about the Reston strain for a minute?
Yeah.
It was like right out of a movie. A ship full of infected monkeys, and the virus had survived for months on board.
The Reston incident was a huge wake-up call. It showed us just how easily a virus can travel across continents, completely undetected.
And it didn't just survive, right? It showed how Ebola can mutate. What's to say it couldn't evolve to survive even longer in different environments?
That's the million-dollar question. A longer incubation period. It could be circulating for weeks, months, who knows, before anyone even knew it was there.
Okay, now I'm really starting to get freaked out. But amidst all the scary Ebola stuff, there was one thing that gave me a bit of hope, which was the whole thing with the bats.
Ah, yes. The masters of viral coexistence.
It seems like they carry all sorts of viruses, some really nasty ones, but they don't get sick, like they have some kind of superpower.
Well, they do have this extraordinary ability. Remember how our DNA has telomeres? Those caps on the ends that shorten as our cells divide.
Right, like the plastic tips on shoelaces.
Exactly. Over time, they get shorter and the cells can't divide anymore. They die, natural part of aging. But bats, they've developed a way to add length back to their telomeres.
Wait, so they're slowing down their aging process?
In a way, yes. It might explain their long lifespans, and it seems to play a role in how they handle viruses. They can repair their DNA so they tolerate a much higher viral load than humans without experiencing the same damage.
It's like they're playing the game of life on easy mode. Incredible DNA repair, AD. Their bodies run hot, which we know Ebola hates.
Their immune systems are incredibly efficient. But it's more than that. They seem to tolerate these viruses not by eradicating them, but by keeping them in check. And they do it without the massive inflammatory response that our bodies have.
So they figured out a way to coexist, not just fight a war every second of every day.
Exactly, and that's what makes them so fascinating to study, unlocking the secrets of bad immunity. That could revolutionize how we approach antiviral therapies in humans.
It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? Something that terrifies us could hold the key to saving us.
It really makes you think about the connections in nature. So much we can learn from these creatures, especially when it comes to fighting viruses.
For sure. But what about what we're already doing to fight Ebola? We're not totally helpless against it, are we?
No, not at all. We've made some real progress in recent years, both in understanding Ebola and developing treatments. Remember that case of the American doctor who got Ebola working in Africa?
You mean the one who got that experimental serum?
That's the one. He got a bunch of different treatments, including antibodies from survivors
Oh.
and some cutting-edge RNA stuff designed to stop the virus from replicating.
And it worked. He made it.
He did.
Wow.
It was just one case, but it was definitely a sign that these new approaches could be the way forward.
That's incredible. But it makes you wonder, with all this talk of mutations and stuff, what if these treatments just stop working one day?
That's the challenge, isn't it? It's like a race. We're developing new treatments, but the virus is evolving too. That's why we can't stop researching. Gotta stay one step ahead.
Part of staying ahead is understanding the long game too, right? Even for survivors. That whole thing about the virus hiding out in the eyes and sperm, that was pretty freaky.
It really is. We're still figuring out what Ebola does to the body long after the initial infection. What are the chances of it coming back? What complications could there be down the line? We're still working on those answers.
So it's not just a one and done thing. This virus, it sticks with you.
In a way, yes. So even with all the progress, we've got to be cautious. We have to keep working to prevent outbreaks. And we can't let up on research and public health measures.
I think you nailed it there. Balance is key, right?
Yeah.
Be aware of the risks, but also hopeful about new discoveries.
Absolutely. And knowledge is power. The more we know about Ebola, how it works, what it's vulnerable to, the better we can fight it. Better treatments, vaccines, prevention strategies, it all comes from understanding.
Well, I've got to say, after this deep dive,
Mhm.
I have a whole new perspective on this virus, the power of it, the mystery.
And hopefully a little more curiosity, too. There's still so much out there to discover, and that's what fuels science.
You know, it really hits home that something like a virus in bats can have such a huge impact on all of us.
Exactly. Who knows what other secrets are out there, just waiting to be discovered. Maybe the answer to wiping out Ebola for good or stopping the next pandemic is hiding somewhere we least expect it.
Wow, now that's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this intense deep dive into the world of Ebola. We've covered a lot of ground, from those terrifying early mortality rates to those amazing virus-fighting bats and even those hopeful new treatments. Till next time, stay curious.